was doing my rounds in the ICU when I saw a patient standing at the end of the hall, but he'd been pronounced dead 2 hours earlier. It was the kind of night every nurse dreads. Too quiet, too still. When the hospital goes silent after midnight, it doesn't feel like a place for the living anymore. It hums, it watches. My shift had started at 11. I was the only RN covering the North ICU wing, 3 patients total, all sedated, all stable. The fluorescent lights hummed above me, flickering every so often like they were running out of patience. The smell of antiseptic hung in the air, sharp and metallic. I remember thinking I'd kill for another coffee. Mine sat forgotten on the desk, lukewarm, a faint skin forming on top. The security doors down the hall gave off that soft electronic beep every time someone badged through. Only that sound and the rhythmic beeping of monitors broke the stillness. At 12:43 a.m., I made my second round. Routine vitals, chart check, replace an IV bag in 2:15. The hallway stretched long and sterile before me. Light bounced off the waxed floors in thin strips. The air conditioning vent hissed above. I passed room 213 without even looking in. It had been cleaned earlier that evening after the code. Mr. Hanley, 67, cardiac arrest, no return of spontaneous circulation. I'd helped wheel him down to the morgue myself. That room was empty now. Lights off, door closed. At least, it should have been. As I reached the nurse's station at the far end, the overhead light behind me flickered once, then again. I turned, instinctively glancing down the corridor. That's when I saw it. Room 213's light had come on. Just that one. A pale rectangle glowing through the narrow window in the door. For a second, I thought maybe housekeeping had come back. But we don't clean rooms at 1 in the morning. I frowned, checked my clipboard. No notes, no maintenance order. Maybe motion sensor, I thought. Maybe a glitch. Still, a small chill crawled up the back of my neck. I took a step toward it, the rubber soles of my shoes squeaking against the floor. Each step seemed louder than it should have been. Halfway there, the light inside flickered again, dimmed, then steadied. When I reached the door, I hesitated. The placard still read 213 in bold black letters, tape residue beneath where we'd removed the isolation sticker earlier that evening. I could hear something faint inside, a soft rustle, like fabric shifting. I pushed the door open just enough to peer through. The curtain around the bed was half drawn. The monitor beside it was dark, but someone was sitting up. A man, back straight, shoulders thin beneath the hospital gown, head tilted slightly downward as though he were staring at his lap. For a moment I didn't breathe, because even from that distance, even in the uneven light, I knew that face. "Mr. Hanley?" I whispered before I could stop myself. He didn't move. I stepped inside, heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. The IV line dangled from the stand, the bag empty, tube still connected to his arm, except there was no tape, no puncture, nothing holding it in place. It just hung there. "Mr. Hanley," I said again, softer. No response. His skin looked gray, damp, but his lips were curved, just slightly, like he was trying to smile. I took another step, trying to stay calm. Maybe I'd walked into the wrong room. Maybe someone had moved a patient without charting it. The floor creaked beneath me. Mr. Hanley's head turned toward me, slowly, stiffly, until his eyes met mine. They were glassy, unfocused, but there was awareness there. Something faint, flickering, like a candle struggling to stay lit. And then, he smiled wider. Every hair on my arms stood up. Before I could speak, the monitor beside him came to life with a deafening bap, a flatline. I jumped, heart in my throat, eyes snapping to the screen. The green line crawled straight across, unbroken. When I looked back, the bed was empty. For a full 5 seconds I couldn't move. The air felt wrong, too thick, too cold. My breath fogged slightly in front of me. I yanked the curtain open, half expecting him to be crouched behind it. Nothing, just clean sheets, folded neatly, untouched. I checked the floor. No footprints, no drag marks, nothing disturbed. My mind scrambled for logic. Maybe I'd fallen asleep at the desk and dreamt it. Maybe I'd imagined everything. But then I noticed the IV bag swinging gently on its hook, slow, rhythmic, like someone had brushed past it moments ago. That's when the light flickered again. Once, twice. Then it steadied. The silence after was unbearable. Even the machines in the other rooms seemed to hold their breath. I backed out of 213, my hands trembling so badly I nearly dropped my clipboard. At the nurse's station, I grabbed the phone and called down to security. "Hey, can you check the cameras on North ICU? Something weird, just..." The line filled with static. Then, faintly, through the crackle, I thought I heard breathing. "Hello?" I said. "Security?" Nothing. Just the slow, ragged sound of someone exhaling directly into the line. I hung up fast. When I looked up, the hallway lights dimmed again, every single one, until only the light from room 213 remained. And that's when I saw him. A figure at the far end of the corridor, half lit in the doorway's glow. Tall, thin, gown clinging wetly to his skin. He was standing perfectly still. For a moment, I told myself it was a shadow or one of the on-call doctors. But then the figure stepped forward, bare feet slapping faintly against the tile. I froze. The world seemed to narrow until there was only that sound. Step, step, step. I whispered his name once more. "Mr. Hanley?" He stopped. The light behind him flickered violently, on, off, until the hallway pulsed in flashes. When it steadied, he was gone. I stood there shaking, waiting for something else to happen, for someone else to appear. But nothing did. The monitors in the rooms beside me beeped softly, steady rhythms returning, as if the hospital itself had decided to pretend nothing had happened. Still, as I turned back toward the station, I could feel it. Eyes on me. Watching. Following. I told myself I'd write it up in the morning. That exhaustion, grief, stress, anything could explain what I saw. But deep down, I knew better. Because when I finally sat down and glanced at the patient log, Mr. Hanley's name had reappeared on the active list. Room 213. Status, stable. The hallway felt different after that. Heavier somehow, like the air itself knew something it shouldn't. I sat frozen at the nurse's desk, staring at the monitor that showed our patient vitals. 3 active rooms. All stable. Then suddenly, a 4th green line flickered to life. Room 13. At first, I thought maybe the system was rebooting, but the readings matched perfectly. Heart rate, blood pressure, oxygen levels, identical to Mr. Hanley's last moments before he coded earlier that night. I felt my pulse quicken. I didn't want to look down that hallway again, but my body moved on instinct. Room 213's door was still open, light spilling faintly onto the floor. Except now the other lights, every single one, had dimmed to a dull yellow, leaving that room glowing like a mouth in the dark. And then I heard it. Footsteps. Slow, deliberate, coming from behind me. The kind of sound you feel before you hear. Wet, uneven. I turned so fast my chair hit the counter. Nothing there. Just the corridor stretching empty and pale. I took one step backward and froze. The monitor beside me flickered again. Now there were 2 vitals. Room 213 and room 215. My last patient. The second heartbeat on screen synced perfectly with the first, as if something unseen was sharing it. Then, from inside 215, a sound, the heart monitor beeping in the same rhythm as 213. Faster. Louder. My stomach dropped. I ran. When I reached room 215, the patient was still asleep, chest rising slowly under the blanket. But the monitor wasn't reading his vitals. The numbers on screen, the pulse rate, oxygen, everything, they were identical to Hanley's file. And then, in the reflection of the glass cabinet, I saw him. Standing right behind me. I turned. Nothing. The room was empty except for the sound of my own breath. The overhead lights began to dim again, one by one, until the only glow came from the end of the hallway. Room 213, still open, still waiting. Something inside me knew this wasn't over until I went back. Each step toward that door felt heavier than the last. The closer I got, the colder the air became. My breath fogged with every exhale. I reached the doorway and stopped. The room was darker now, only the faint blue pulse of the monitor casting light across the sheets. And that's when I saw him again. Mr. Hanley, sitting on the edge of the bed, head tilted slightly, eyes fixed on me. Except this time his skin looked soaked, like he just crawled out of deep water. His hair clung to his forehead, his hospital gown dripping onto the tile. He didn't blink, he didn't move. I whispered his name, and then he stood. Slowly. I stepped back, hit the wall, nowhere to go. He came closer, bare feet slapping wetly against the floor. When he stopped in front of me, his face was inches from mine. Eyes black, hollow, yet somehow burning from within, his lips parted. And in a voice that didn't sound like his, more like something using his lungs, he whispered, "You forgot to say goodbye." All the lights exploded at once. A deafening alarm screamed through the corridor. The red emergency strobes flashed across the walls, painting everything in bursts of crimson. I remember screaming, but I couldn't hear it. My knees buckled, and then nothing. When I woke up, it was daylight. 2 nurses were standing over me. I was lying on the floor outside room 213. They told me they'd found me unconscious during shift change. I tried to explain about the lights, the monitors, the voice, but their faces said everything. They didn't believe me. Then one of them hesitated and said, "There's something you might want to see." She handed me the overnight security footage. I watched it later that afternoon, alone in the staff lounge. The cameras showed me doing my rounds, talking to someone in the hallway, gesturing, turning, nodding. But I was alone, except for one frame. A single frozen image as the lights flickered, a silhouette standing inches behind me, head tilted, a hand on my shoulder. I transferred floors after that night, but every time I walk past room 213, I feel someone watching. Story 2. The morgue door. I worked security in the hospital basement, the lowest level. It's quiet down there after midnight, too quiet. The only thing that ever really moved was the automatic morgue door, and that night, it kept opening by itself, even though the motion sensor had been unplugged for weeks. The morgue is a different world after hours. Upstairs, life hums, monitors beeping, wheels rolling. Down here, it's still. Air thick with cleaning chemicals and that faint, metallic cold that clings to everything. I was the only guard assigned to the sub-level that week. Simple job. Patrol once an hour, check equipment locks, sign off on the logs. I'd done it 100 times. Except that night felt different the second I stepped off the elevator. The air was colder than usual, not just chilly, biting. My flashlight beam looked thinner somehow, like it couldn't fully cut the dark. And the hum of the refrigerator compressors, it didn't sound steady. It pulsed, almost like breathing. I told myself it was just the building's old ventilation system, like everyone did. But even the walls felt like they were listening. I sat in the security booth, eyes on the grainy monitors. One screen showed the basement corridor, long, narrow, lined with tile that always reflected the lights too brightly. At the end of it, the morgue door. Heavy, stainless steel with a motion sensor just above the frame. Except that sensor wasn't supposed to work. Maintenance had disconnected it after a short circuit 2 months ago. Door stayed manual now. Or so I thought. 2:17 a.m. Time for the final round before my break. I logged the hour, grabbed my flashlight, and made my way down the hall. Every step echoed too long. The overhead lights flickered just once, then steadied, almost warning me to stop. The morgue was at the very end. Double doors, sealed tight, small observation window with fogged glass. I reached for my clipboard to note the check, and the door slid open. Just a smooth metallic shh, no warning. No sound of the motor starting up, just movement. Inside, black. Not a hint of the usual fluorescent glow from the ceiling fixtures. The refrigerators were humming though. Low, steady. I froze in the doorway, hand hovering over the radio. Control, this is Harris. Basement door just opened by itself. Confirm if anyone's running a test. Static. Nothing but static. I stepped closer, leaning into the darkness. The air was freezing. Not cold like before, but ice burning my lungs. There was a smell too. Something faintly sweet under the bleach. I told myself maybe it was air pressure. That's what they always say, right? But then, something whispered. Not loud, just enough that I couldn't tell if it came from the room or from my own head. Multiple voices, overlapping, whispering fast. I couldn't make out most of it, except one word, stay. It came so clear it felt spoken directly into my ear. I stepped back. The flashlight trembled in my hand. The door stayed open. I waited, counting seconds, 30, 40. Finally, I swallowed my fear, reached out, and slid the door shut. It sealed with a solid metallic click. I exhaled, wrote the time down, 2:17 a.m., just like every other night, except before I could even turn away, shh. The door opened again, smooth, effortless. The same freezing gust of air poured out. This time, I saw movement inside, a shadow brushing across the far wall, but there was no one there. My heart was pounding so loud I almost missed the next sound. Faint, muffled, like whispering again, only deeper. I took a step closer, and then my walkie crackled. Harris. I froze. It was my own voice, coming through my walkie, then through the static. Don't close it. Exact same tone, exact same voice. Mine. I dropped the walkie, It clattered across the tile and echoed down the hall like a gunshot. Inside the morgue, something shifted. A body bag on the central table moved, just slightly, once, then again. I stood frozen as the zipper began to slide down, slowly, halfway open on its own. The air pressure dropped. Lights flickered overhead. That's when I realized the whispering hadn't stopped. It was inside the room now, circling me, and every voice sounded faintly like mine. My flashlight blinked out. All I could see was the faint outline of the bag. Something inside was moving, slow and deliberate. I backed up to the doorframe, ready to bolt. Then suddenly, the morgue door began to slide shut on its own. I lunged, jamming my hand in the frame to stop it, cold metal biting my skin, but it kept closing, steady, relentless. I pulled back just in time, stumbling into the hall as it sealed with a heavy clank. Silence. Complete silence. I grabbed my radio again, hand shaking, whispering for backup, but the line was dead, just a faint hum. Then, from the other side of the door, something knocked. Twice. I stood there frozen, staring at the steel door, waiting for it to open again. But it didn't. Only that heavy silence pressing against me, thick, expectant. I told myself to keep walking, to finish the round, to log the issue and come back later. But the longer I stood there, the more I realized something was wrong with the air. The hallway didn't sound right anymore. It felt like sound itself was gone, like the building was holding its breath. Then, behind me, the walkie crackled again. Just faint static at first. Then my voice came through. "Harris, you forgot the door." It was me, my exact voice. But I hadn't spoken. I looked down. The walkie wasn't even powered on. That's when the light above the morgue flickered once, twice, and every other light on the hall went out. Total darkness. My flashlight refused to turn on. Nothing but a dead click. I could hear something inside the morgue moving. Slow, deliberate dragging. A heavy shift of weight across the tile floor. Then, a single metallic clink like a tray falling. I backed up until my shoulders hit the opposite wall. Whatever was inside was getting closer. I could hear the faint slap of bare feet on tile. I reached for my phone. No signal, of course. Basement dead zone. Then I saw it. Through the small square window in the morgue door, a shadow passed across the glass. Too tall to be anyone from staff. It paused, then turned, like it was looking directly at me through the fogged pane. The door handle twitched. Once, twice. Then it started to move. The entire steel panel slid open with a long, slow shh. Cold air spilled out, thicker than before. It smelled like antiseptic and something older. The figure stood just inside the darkness, half visible under the flickering ceiling lights. I couldn't see a face. Just the outline of a body in a white sheet, hanging loose over its shoulders. For a second, I thought it was one of the corpses from earlier. Revived, confused. Until it took a step forward, and I heard it breathing, wet, strained, and wrong. I stumbled backward, radio clutched in one hand, yelling, "Security! Basement! Code!" The radio hissed with static, and then a whisper cut through. "Don't leave me again." The door slammed behind me, sealing me inside the morgue. Lights surged white, then burst. For a split second, I saw everything. The tables, the body bags, every single one, moving, twitching, writhing, like something was trying to get out. The tall figure turned toward me, its head cocking sideways. From beneath the sheet, two black eyes gleamed. The shape began to walk forward, slow, deliberate, dragging one foot. I ran for the back exit, hitting the emergency bar, but it didn't budge. The air turned icy. My breath came out in clouds. Then, another sound. Whispering, from everywhere. All overlapping, urgent, whispering my name. Harris, Harris, Harris. Building louder and louder until I screamed for it to stop. And everything went white. When I woke up, it was morning. The lights were on. The morgue door stood wide open, calm, motionless. I was lying on the floor in the hallway, uniform drenched with sweat. No one else around. They said I must have fainted. But the camera feed didn't show anything unusual, just me standing at the door at exactly 2:17 a.m. and then collapsing. But I watched that footage myself later, and for one frame, just one, there was a figure standing behind me. Shoulder to shoulder, no face. Just the outline of a head tilting slowly toward mine. They said it's the air pressure that opens it, or temperature sensors, maybe even rats. Pause. But every night since then, that same morgue door still opens at 2:17 a.m., even when the power's cut. Story 3. The call from room 404. The nurse's station phone rang from room 404. But 404 doesn't exist. That's how it began, just one call. But sometimes in hospitals, one sound means more than you think. It was my third week on the overnight rotation. Student nurse, graveyard shift. The kind of hours no one wants, but every rookie gets. Our wing was under partial renovation, so half the rooms were sealed off behind plastic curtains. Flickering lights, exposed pipes, and the kind of echo that made every footstep sound like it belonged to someone else. At the nurse's station, the clock read 2:58 a.m. I was alone, logging vitals into the old computer system. Coffee gone cold. The faint beeping of patient monitors in the distance kept me awake. That's when I noticed something odd. Our room numbers jumped from 403 straight to 405. No 404. I checked the charting software, same thing. No record, no room assignment. When I asked one of the older nurses earlier that night, she laughed quietly and said, "Oh, they bricked that one up years ago. Renovation accident. They just skipped the number since." I remember her tone. She said it casually, but her eyes didn't match her voice. Almost like she didn't want to talk about it. By 3 a.m., the floor was silent. I stretched, rubbed my eyes, and checked my phone. No signal, as usual. The emergency lighting above the sealed renovation area flickered once, twice, then stabilized. And then it happened. The desk phone beside me rang. Shrill. Sudden. Caller ID glowed green. Room 404. For a second, I just stared at it, certain it was a glitch. No such extension existed in our system, but it kept ringing. 6 rings, 7. I picked up. "Good evening, this is the nurse's station." Static. Then faint, uneven breathing. Not mechanical, not automated. Human. I waited, pulse hammering in my neck. "Hello?" A pause. Then a whisper. "You forgot me." I slammed the receiver down so hard the bell inside rattled. My hands were shaking. I told myself it was a prank, maybe maintenance testing a line, or a wrong connection. But the voice? It sounded close, too close. I unplugged the phone cord, just to be safe. The moment the cord left the wall, the phone rang again. I froze. No power, no line. And still, it rang. Lights down the corridor began to dim one by one, each going dark in sequence. I stood there under the last flickering bulb, the phone ringing beside me like it refused to die. Then, from the far end of the hall, the renovation area, I heard plastic rustling. The sealed section, the part they said was closed off. The thin sheet of plastic covering the old doorway started to move, not flutter, bulge. Outward, like something on the other side was pressing against it. Slow, steady pressure. You could see the outline of a hand pushing through from behind. I backed up, whispering, "Hello? Is someone in there?" No answer. But from behind the plastic, the same ringtone echoed again. Faint, muffled, as if another phone were ringing inside that sealed space. Room 404, I grabbed my radio. "This is Nurse Lila on floor 3. I think someone's in the closed-off wing. I need assistance." Static. Then, faintly, my own voice came through the radio speaker. "You forgot me." The hall lights went out completely. The only glow came from the tiny red LED on the desk phone. Still flashing, still ringing. I could hear movement behind the plastic now, slow, dragging footsteps, closer, closer, and then silence. The ringing stopped. For 5 seconds, I heard nothing. Then a single whisper from behind the plastic, "Answer it." I stood frozen. The voice had come from inside the sealed room. But there wasn't supposed to be any room at all, just bricks and construction dust behind that plastic barrier. The red light on the phone blinked once more, then stopped completely. I whispered, "Who's there?" No response. I took one slow step forward. The air felt wrong, heavy, cold, like I'd stepped into a freezer. Each breath came out as white mist. The plastic hung still now, sagging inward, like whatever had pressed against it was gone. But deep behind it, I heard a faint ringing again. It was coming from inside that walled section. My heart hammered as I grabbed a flashlight from the desk and approached the renovation zone. The beam cut through clouds of dust, glinting off old equipment and half-exposed wires. The plastic rustled as I lifted the edge. Cold air spilled out, smelling like concrete and mildew. "Hello?" I called again, quieter now. "Maintenance? Is someone?" Crunch. My shoe hit something sharp. Broken tile scattered over a patch of dried plaster. I stepped inside. The hallway behind the barrier was short, maybe 10 feet. And at the very end stood an old wooden door. No markings, no handle. Above it, stenciled in fading red paint, 404. The flashlight flickered as I stepped closer. I pressed my hand against the wood. It was freezing, like metal pulled straight from ice, and from behind it, the faintest sound of someone breathing. Slow, wet, shaky. I tried the radio again, just static. I whispered, "Security, this is Nurse Lila. I need backup." But instead of my voice, the speaker hissed. "Now you remember." The door rattled once. Then, without warning, it opened. The beam of my flashlight hit what used to be a patient room. Everything was gray and dust-coated, frozen in time, collapsed ceiling tiles, an overturned gurney, and in the corner, a single old hospital phone, the kind with the heavy black receiver. It was ringing. I walked closer, each step crunching over debris. The sound seemed to pulse through the floor, vibrating up my legs. The phone cable snaked into the wall, not through the outlet, but into the concrete itself. It rang again and again. I should have turned back. Every instinct screamed to leave, but my hand moved on its own. I lifted the receiver. At first, nothing. Then a voice, soft, gurgling, broken. "You left me in the dark." The air went still. I whispered, "Who is this?" A pause. Then, louder, "You promised you'd come back." I stepped back, shaking my head. "I don't know what you're talking about." But the voice cut me off. "You forgot room 404. The walls around me began to pulse, the old paint blistering as if something alive moved beneath it. The lights from the hallway flickered violently through the torn plastic behind me. Then, from the far corner, a figure stood, not moving. Just standing in the dark, half lit by my failing flashlight, dressed in a decayed hospital gown. Head tilted down, I froze. The phone slipped from my hand and hit the floor. But the voice kept coming from it, whispering through the static. "Now you remember." The figure stepped forward, each movement stiff, mechanical. One step, then another. As it reached the doorway, the power went out completely. When I woke up, it was morning. I was on the floor in front of the nurse's station. Security found me unconscious, no sign of forced entry, no open doors. They said the renovation area was sealed tight. No 404. No phone, nothing. But when they reviewed the security footage, every night at 3:04 a.m., the call log lights up for room 404. And every time you can faintly hear a phone ringing, even when the power's off. And sometimes, even now, when I'm on shift, I still hear that same ringtone. Even when my phone's off. Hospitals never really sleep. And those who've worked the night shift know that not every sound in the dark comes from the living. So if you ever hear a phone ring from an empty room, don't answer.